Grand. I think we'll start. Hopefully you can all hear me. Evening all. Good to see some familiar faces and names there. So cool. Just some basic housekeeping. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so just some quick basic housekeeping, and I can crack on. I'm just going to record it tonight, and so if there's anything you sort of like want to go back over or anything, then I'll pop that up on my website under the news in the next couple of days, so you'll be able to sort of revisit things if you want. And also, like, I've muted you all, so if you have any questions, you know, been quite a few come through already, but if you have any that come from what I sort of mentioned in the next sort of half hour or 40 minutes or so, then just lob it into the chat box, and then at the end I'll just pick those up and answer those as well. So quite a few of you know me already, I think, but just sort of very briefly, a broad background to myself, quick sort of like whiz through. I've worked in the industry for getting on for 30 years now, a whole variety of places, originally from down the south coast, live in North Wales, and you know, like normal sort of local authority, private company, expedition companies, charities, the list goes on. And I suppose around about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I've been running my own business since then, and it's very much based on the mountains, climbing and walking, guiding or teaching, and predominantly in the UK, but also quite a few overseas trips, private overseas trips as well, to sort of cragging areas and trekking areas. I suppose specifically around the RCI though, I got my SPSA, Single Pitch Supervisors Award back in the 90s, and I've seen it morph into the SPA, and then on to like what we currently have, which is the Rock Climbing Instructor Award. And in terms of the sort of working on those courses and providing those courses, I've been providing these for about 10 years and working on them for a considerable time before that as well. So hopefully got a bit of an idea of the syllabus, and also what it's really the reality of working on at the crag. I was probably over the years, I was trying to work it out tonight, it's really hard to work it out, but I've probably done over 1,000 sessions, like in a sort of an RCI type context, whether that's indoors or outdoors. Most of my work, I suppose, has probably been done outdoors, but yeah, quite a few over the years. So I'm just going to sort of like basically crack on and go for it straight away. So I'm just going to start, before I sort of go into some of the questions that you've sort of posed me and sent me. I was just going to like just sort of like highlight some useful reading, and this is sort of working towards the assessment. So, and I'm going to reference this quite a bit tonight, these sort of documents. So some of the questions you've asked, I'm going to actually answer with sort of specific little statements and paragraphs I've leafed out of the correct parts. So, excuse me. So rock climbing instructor, hopefully you sort of probably have come across some of this. If not, I'll sort of tell you now where you can find them. So rock climbing instructor, guidance notes for trainers and assessors. Now, this is found in the Rock Climbing Instructor page on the Mountain Training website, and it's in the Assessment tab. So you have a Training tab, a Consolidation tab, and Assessment tab, and there's a small PDF icon, and it's there. It's not particularly easy to find necessarily. It doesn't sort of jump out of the page at you, but it's a really cool document because it essentially tells you what I need to do on a training course and also an assessment course. So it kind of like provides some clarity around some of the questions that you have tonight. You also have the candidate handbook, which is a brilliant, like a really cool document, I think. Certainly if you had picked up the old version, so like the SPA, sort of old blue document, pretty much like black and white writing, black and white photos, it was not interesting in any shape or form. It didn't motivate you to pick it up, whereas this is actually quite an attractive document in that sense. But actually there's a lot of good information provided within, and these two documents are my working documents. So to provide a training course and an assessment course, these are my two reference tools. I have nothing else from mountain training, so it's these two, and you also have access to them. So you have clarity on like what the scope of the award is and what the syllabus is, but then you have clarity about like what I might get up to on an assessment course. And this is like my guidance notes. Interestingly, I think there's been quite a few cases over the years where folk who have been deferred and they've been sort of asked about it have actually never read the candidate handbook. So it's a bit strange one that, because I find that like it's like going to an exam and then not really knowing what you're going to be asked to do. So at some point, if you haven't already, but at some point, yeah, have a breeze through it, and it tells you everything you need to know. Certainly within the candidate handbook, it's definitely a lot better than it used to be. So we have a syllabus, so it kind of identifies all the individual points. At the end of each of those syllabus areas, you also have some guidance notes. So it just sort of explains it a little bit more. And then there's also some key practice points as well. So if you're a little bit unclear, then hopefully like by the time you've read that whole chapter, you've got some ideas of what the syllabus is, and then kind of how you can actually gain that knowledge. So as I said, there's quite a few questions, and we're going to look at certain parts of these documents, or the two main documents, the guidance notes, training assessors, and also the syllabus. There's one last document as well, which is again on the website. And as you click onto like the home page of the Rock Climbing Instructor Award, you have the candidate handbook and one or two other like hyperlinks, one of them being this, the skills checklist. So it's a really good document where you can work through every single syllabus point and sort of mark yourself almost. And then that will sort of identify areas that you may want to sort of develop yourself a bit more, or you may feel that you're perfectly comfortable with. So it's a good document to sort of like, when you're thinking of like perhaps booking an assessment, to sort of like whip out, go through and sort of see where you fit, where you fit within it all. So coming on to the scope of the award, there's some good easy questions being presented around this particular one. So I think having a good understanding of the scope is really important. So you know, you're not put in a position beyond gaining the award where you're asked to do a job and it's sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit or taking you outside the scope. So if you're not sure, then like the handbook, the candidate handbook is where you start, because I'm sure you're all aware, on page 4, the scope is identified. And I think this identifies how good this award is. This is a really fantastic award. And it's not necessarily just about taking people to a single pitch crag and doing some bottom rope sessions and a group abseil. You know, you can actually do an awful lot of this particular award, and you can have a maximum engagement on crags, on walls, and get people really motivated. And as an introduction to the sport, which is kind of what we often are, then hopefully they go away like massively motivated by like our engagement in that period of time we've had with them. So kind of just quickly going through it, teaching climbing skills. So yep, you can definitely, you know, the standard stuff I suppose is pier belaying and putting harness on and helmets on and stuff like that, and some movement skills. But you know, why can't you also, and another key elements to teaching to climbing skills is like placing gear and building anchors. You know, doing that all ground-based is well within scope. Taking people climbing, bulging, abseiling, hopefully that's kind of standard. And you know, our kind of primary aim when we take people climbing to a single pitch crag is to keep them safe. So ensuring that we're kind of like managing people safely. The terrain is as identified, is a whole race of sort of places to go. Single pitch trad, I'm going to come back to in a moment and identify that. Sports crags, it's always been in there, but clearly it's highlighted. And I think this year we've seen a huge transition from people from indoors to outdoors. So this idea of like resin to bolts almost, and that's like a really good natural transition to sort of coming outdoors. And whether that's just because of like what's happened over the last 18 months, but I think also perhaps accelerated by the Olympics as well. People are sort of keen to know what it's about and keen to go out there. So sports crags are well in. And then the exclusions, I hope, are fairly self-explanatory. Mountaineering, scrambling, sort of scrambling type stuff, multi-pitch rock climbing, teaching lead climbing, and then access to sort of places that are difficult to access. The appendix, so this is the definition of a single pitch. It's at the back of the candidate handbook, appendix 1. And I'm just going to kind of go straight into like one of the questions. Can I work on easy multi-pitch routes like Triven back? It's a good question, this, actually, because there's probably quite a few crags that sort of fall into this criteria. It's a fantastic venue, like brilliant to take beginners. There's a lot there. There's really good challenges. It can be climbed in a rope length and definitely fulfills some of these criteria. But as it says there, it's not, it's just needs to be described as a single pitch in the guidebook. And it doesn't matter which guidebook you pick up, whether you pick up the Rock Facts guidebook or the Ogwen guidebook, they all identify Triven Back as a multi-pitch venue. So it would be out of scope. So it's well worth like trying to like just make sure that like you have read the guidebook properly and there are no multi-pitch venue in there. So we've had a couple of crags over the years that have changed. There's one particular crag I can think of where in one guidebook traditionally it has been multi-pitch, some of the routes were multi-pitch, and now the guidebook has changed. The newer version of the guidebook has come out and it's now single pitch, so it has changed a little bit. Can I assist mountaineering climbing instructor on multi-pitch climbs? Yeah, so I think that's something you just need to discuss. You know, it's no clarity on this in terms of like the handbook, and clearly if you were to sort of like go out to multi-pitching with people who have paid you, then you'd be out of scope. But in terms of working alongside an MCI, assisting an MCI, then really that's a discussion you'd have to have with that person or an organization. And I'd imagine it'd be something like along some sort of site specific sign off. So that would probably require some sort of further training and maybe an assessment element to it as well. But I'll leave it there because that's quite a chunky subject in itself. But in essence, it's outside the scope. So you'd have to have further discussions to sort of see how that would work. I'm not an ML, but can I take clients to mountain crags? Yeah, so there's certainly in North Wales here, we have, you know, huge amounts of like single pitch crags. We have traditional single pitch crags, Holyhead Mountain, Upper Tier Traumatic, other sort of the classic places. A couple other like things that have crept in over the last few years. But there's loads and loads of single pitch crags that are like in the guidebooks and they're well away from the road. And as it says here, presents no difficulties on approach or retreat, such as route finding, scrambling, or navigating. I guess if you're using a map and compass, because you kind of got to think worst case scenario. So we've had a fantastic summer, we've had a good September. We're definitely coming into autumn, and the weather is changing, and we've had a lot of clag this weekend. So if you went in a few K and then you're unable to like work your way out and you're having to use a map and compass, then without a sort of train specific walking award, you'd be out of scope. So for example, here, this is an area, this is Northern Rhinox, and it's the actual car park is to the west, so it's just following those sort of green dashes off the map, so to speak. About another 500 meters is the car park. So you can see you're a few kilometers in, and within the green sort of circle, that type of area, there's like an amazing plethora of like this gritstone rock, which is absolutely incredible to climb on. It hasn't seen much traffic, but like some really good climbing. So, you know, it fulfills all the other elements of the criteria. However, it's not easy to get to, and it's definitely not easy to get out of. You know, if your clag came down, you'd have to really use a GPS to get yourself out. So these would kind of be like without an ML or terrain specific walking qualification, then you would be out of scope. So Logbook, I've just started breaking it down to Logbook. I suppose I was trying to like bunch things into sort of little categories, I guess. So Logbook, I've heard this quite a bit actually, and this is a good one. Folk must be able to, some instructors have sort of say that like you need to be able to climb VS, HVS, or have a grade in hand, however you want to deem it, okay? And that is straight away a barrier for some people, without a doubt. And so let's just clarify that. So the syllabus is very clear on it, and it talks about severe graded climbs. It doesn't mention any other grade. It's as simple as that. So we are only allowed to assess what's in the syllabus. So we are not asking people to like climb anything beyond severe if they don't wish, and we don't ask for it to be in the logbooks either. So we only assessing what's in that in the syllabus. So for example, it says competently leading severe graded climbs. So, trying to define competent, for example, picking the right route would be helpful. So like kind of picking up the guidebook and make sure you identify the right route. But really when you're on the route is placing the gear really well and then appropriately as well. So being in balance, allowing that sort of gold standard of placement going in to protect yourself on the lead and protecting yourself in the second. And then when you arrive at the top, make sure you have enough gear within that particular route so you're not at risk of a ground fall, for example. And then when you arrive at the top, you're also building good anchors and being able to see your second and so on. So things that like we wouldn't be keen on, so perhaps not competently leading, would be, part way up your route, you're dropping kit all over the place, you're going off route, so you haven't identified the routes particularly well, you're not following the natural line. You arrive at the crux and then you sort of go up and down, back up, then back down, and you're not sure about how to like unravel it. A bit of dancing, bit of Elvis leg, we all have it, but just, we should be like, those are the things that we're not really keen on. There's probably other things as well. But what we're after is like a nice, comfortable, controlled performance on that route. Just sort of like enjoy the route. You get on the crag and you just look like you're just comfortable and you're enjoying it. And so you go onto the route, you place a piece of gear, you think about where your feet are going to go, you move up, you spend a few seconds like thinking about the next move, where your hands are going to go, where do I need to get my feet to, where do I think the next piece of gear is, then I move up, and the routine starts. 10 minutes later, I'm at the top of the route, and I've selected an anchor, and I'm starting to sort of I'm starting to shout down and say I'm safe, and so on. It's also not a speed test. Okay, I think that's important to identify as well. So, we're really after you just having a nice controlled performance throughout that whole route. And we're not after something that's being completed within a few minutes. But I suppose if you took an hour on a 20-minute pitch, that might be a bit of a tad too long, perhaps. So we're just looking for like a comfortable performance. So coming back to this idea of severe, it does say there 20 must be at severe grade. So we're looking for a minimum of 40 routes on trad gear and 20 must be at severe grade or above. It's pretty simple. I think to be comfortable, 20 is okay, but have a few more in your hands under your belt. So if you can get a few more days in, get a few more severes in, then that will definitely just expand your experience and your knowledge and your sort of confidence within that grade. And when you come to the assessment, then you'll be able to demonstrate that you are confident where we need you to be. If you have higher grades, if you have grades that are higher than that, then fantastic. Of course, there are benefits, but it's not a requirement for the award, and we don't need to have anything in your logbook but severes. Okay, so it shouldn't be a barrier. So please don't get worried about that. Just need to turn up and be comfortable on severes. And as it says, and I think it's probably worth pointing out, like, it talks about 4A on sport and also indoors as well. So probably, again, just have that in hand to make sure you're comfortable at that grade within the indoor environment and also the sport environment too. It's just a good excuse to go climbing, isn't it, really? That's kind of how I see it. It does say in the guidance notes as well, we say within the candidate handbook, there's some guidance notes at the end of this element, and the experience requirements for the scheme are listed as a minimum, and I think that's really important. So if you have 40, then there's 40. If you have 50 or 60 or further than that, then clearly things will become easier for you. Of course they will be. So something to bear in mind. Cool. So this one's popped up on a few questions, sort of supervision of 20 sessions, and really about how to access that. And it's a tricky one. Yeah, so when I did my SPSA, there was a requirement to have some supervisory time, but it wasn't anything like this. It wasn't a requirement as structured as this. I was lucky, I suppose, that I'd spent a lot of my time prior working in a climbing wall. So I was sort of mounting like 4 or 5 sessions, perhaps more a week. So it's quite easy for me. gain that experience. It's part of the syllabus, and it's part of the pre-requirements for the assessment. So 20 is what's needed. There isn't any flex with this particular or any of these pre-requirements. You know, this is the standard and this is the minimum, and so there isn't any flex between this. But let's just look at the options here. Climbing wall and local organisations, local companies, local authorities, scouts, or lots of other organisations that I'm sure you may be aware of, may run some form of climbing, and whether it's like a weekly session or a daily session or an occasional thing, those are sort of the organisations that you sort of need to speak to. I think part of the problem perhaps this year is that it's been particularly busy for us. So if I was to sort of look at the local climbing wall, but then also like look at my own scenario, my own situation, sort of like from May through to now, it's been almost, it's been an extremely busy year for us in the outdoor industry. And the last few months is, I suppose, has been in survival mode in some respects, so just working to work, and anything that's not being if it's not anything that's not been particularly important to my business, I've just moved it on and I haven't got to it until now. So I'm sure, like, you know, some of you have been contacting people and organizations, and so it just may well be the busyness of like the summer this particular year in fact. So we're going into a winter now, so wall work and wall opportunities will be there 100%, and it's where we all sort of like head towards these autumnal wintry months. So it's worth, like, probably, if you haven't heard from them, it's probably definitely a climbing wall. It's worth going back to them, persevere, get back in touch, and even better is to pop in. You know, if you're down there climbing, just pop in, but just bear in mind, you know, certainly here at the local wall here, if you popped in at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, that may not be the best time for them, because, you know, they've got lots of kids clubs on and so on, so they're going to be quite busy and they may not be able to sort of like chat to you. So just sort of select your time appropriately. And it's the same with like local organizations. Unfortunately, going into the winter, you know, outdoor opportunities may sort of reduce. Another option could be that you know, speak to the provider, whoever you did your training course with, have a chat with them, because like they, you know, they're obviously in a local, they're in a climbing area, they may be able to, like, they may be aware of some organizations and or companies that offer opportunities or run these sort of on a regular session. Climbing walls are a good option though. That's a really good starting place. But also look for opportunities as well. So for example, the British Mountaineering Council, BMC, have run a number of things over the years, and this year specifically, they had the Women's Trads Festival recently, and so they employed lots of like qualified instructors, but also like there were some shadowing opportunities there as well. They also run like the student seminar, so university clubs are offered places. It's normally around now, so it must be this weekend or last weekend, I think maybe this weekend, here in North Wales. And it's a weekend of taking, you know, university age students and showing them how to be safe on crags. So it could just be a really good shadowing opportunity for you. So there are like other sort of left field opportunities, as I'd say. Another thing I was thinking about, we don't offer anything here. I sort of look after the Mountain Training Association within North Wales and sort of like organise lots of bits and pieces for them. But like when I was posed this question the other day, I was thinking, well, maybe we could offer something here, and I haven't put anything together, but like it may be worth like contacting your local mountain training association person, coordinator, and sort of seeing if there's some sort of like option of what they could organize. Maybe that within their field they might have like contacts. You just don't know. So it's about opening those other doors that perhaps we haven't sort of quite knocked on yet. Brilliant. Equipment. So can my kit be borrowed? So yeah, it's an interesting one. So I suppose like we have personal climbing kit, and then we certainly on assessment we're sort of required to perhaps bring along a bit more, and maybe ropes would be the key one here. I think like bringing your own rack is ideal. So within the guidance notes, we're encouraging you to bring your own kit to the assessment course. And it's really like, it gives us the opportunity to make sure that you understand what's on that rack and why you're using it. You know, it avoids any unknowns. You know, if you, what I mean by that is if you borrow anything, and it avoids the unknowns of like, oh, that's an interesting piece of kit. You know, when did you get that? How long has that been on your harness? Or how much usage has it had? You know, you don't necessarily know the history of it. So kind of having your own kit makes lots of sense, because those simple questions are very easy to answer. Because like if you're in a work, going beyond the assessment, you know, we go to work in some format or another. And if we're using our own kit, we obviously have a responsibility to ensure we know that kit. So it kind of like, it's the same with the assessment really. So ideally, yeah, try and bring your own, as much of your own kit as you can. I think the rope is the area that is probably most commonly where I might offer some help with it. So semi-static rope or rigging rope, whatever you want to call it, it's often an area that folk don't have, or they use a crack that's local to them, and they have like a 15-meter or 20-meter line, for example, that works for that crack. Here in North Wales, that won't work. You know, we need long rigging ropes here. So if you turn up with a 15-meter rigging rope here, then you know, it's going to be tricky. When you book your assessment, you're going to get a kit list, and in there it should identify what you need. So for me, you know, you arrive to North Wales, I'd identify you'd need a 150-meter dynamic rope and 150-meter semi-static rope. And if you have any issues or any problems or concerns around it, then the easiest thing to do is just like give me a shout, and then like, that's fine, you know, send me around rigging rope, I get it, and I can help you out with that. In terms of like, you know, the rack, then really, as it says, you know, we're going to encourage you to bring your own kit. Hopefully that answers that one. There's a good one. What if I forget something? Well, don't. I think it's an easy answer. Yeah, I know we all have like little brain farts sometimes, and you know, we arrive somewhere, and I've done it, you know, I arrive somewhere and I've forgotten something pretty crucial. It does happen, of course it does, but I think, you know, try and for those 2 days, try and find some time prior to those 2 days and get it all sorted. So prepare really well, treat it like work, you know, turn up with the right kit to do the job. And that would also include things for like, you know, personal climbing, waterproofs. You know, if you're coming to North Wales, then you need to have a set of waterproofs in your car, food and drink, and so on. I'm interested. I've had lots of assessments over the years where, you know, we've met, we're about to go somewhere, and then someone's like, I'm going lunch, I need to go to the shop to get lunch. and so that then becomes a bit of a problem, you know, because logistically, it may not be the easiest location to get lunch. So, you know, just simple things like that. Follow the kit lists, and if you have any concerns, just contact the provider, okay, and just sort of like flag it up really early. Much better to sort of engage in that sort of conversation than to arrive on the day and then get yourself a bit flustered about it. Rigging. So is there a preferred method, stroke number of anchors? Yeah, interesting, this one. No, I think is the easy answer to this. You just need to demonstrate what the handbook identifies in the syllabus. So this is the syllabus. So basically, you need to kind of be happy with like identifying these bits and pieces. And these are just sort of just general climbing sort of anchors. There's nothing there that should hopefully like flummox you or throw you a curveball. It's all just fairly straightforward stuff. I suppose like, you know, we all have our favorite ways. You know, we arrive on a personal lead or a climb, for example, we all arrive at the top, and we probably have our own favorite ways of doing things, but it might not necessarily work every time. You know, it depends on the rock type, it depends where the anchors are, it depends the location of the edge, and so on. So, you know, there are undoubtedly times when I've arrived at the top and it's just all presents itself there, and my preferred way is taken up really quick, and I can produce this sort of gold standard anchor system. And then other times I arrive at the top and I'm sort of scratching my head, and there's a piece over there and there's a piece over there, and that piece is like 4 meters away, and I've run out half my kit because I've used it on the route, and now all of a sudden I'm scratching my head and I'm having to be creative. I'm having to, like, you know, improvise an anchor almost. So there isn't a preferred method. And, you know, you might prefer the rope or the sling or a combo, using 2 pieces, 3 pieces, your favorite number 5 nut. You may use a number system to judge each piece, and the anchor itself. You may judge the anchor purely by the size and the actual solid, how solid the placement is. So there's all these factors that you sort of take on board. I guess ultimately, though, you know, we're climbers, you know, so this award is about being a climber, and you inherently will know what is safe, and that's what we're after. I guess if I was to define this a bit better, though, you know, what we're after is your understanding of what is a safe anchor, and can you explain it. So the guidance notes has some interesting comments in there, you know, and it talks about the ability to select and place a sound anchor. It also asks us to establish your understanding of the quality of the anchor. Okay, so your preferred method may not always work, but if you have a good understanding of what is a safe anchor, then you'll be able to adapt. Okay, so just, you know, turn up your favorites, but be prepared. Just like, you know, we don't know what kit you've got, where you've been before, until we sort of meet you. And then you may not have been to all the locations that, you know, some of the locations that we might go to. And some locations are dead simple, and some locations are not, you know, a bit of a puzzle, you know, a bit harder to find, things are further away, things don't work quite as you might want them to work, but that's the reality of a crag. So, you know, you need to have like this wide toolkit of ideas. And then hopefully that brings out your sort of breadth and depth of experience. The handbook has some practice tips. So the candidate handbook has a few practice tips, which include, as you say there, like a number system. Talks about fixed kit, you know, bolts and so on. But I think the last 2 are kind of really interesting. You know, different rock types. So if you go and climb on if you go and climb on gritstone, if you go and climb on limestone, you climb them differently, different style, different manner. You protect them differently, and on the lead, and the anchors at the top are quite different as well, more, you know, generically speaking. So like different rock types are pretty important, I suggest. And then the bit at the bottom, you know, experiment. You know, those who've been on RCI training with me, you'll know that we spend a little bit of time, and I get you to build anchors, and then I just throw you lots of curveballs, lots of challenges. So you can't use slings. You can only use half your rack because you've used the other half on the route. You only have a few meters available because it's a really long pitch, and so on. So I just throw you little challenges and sort of get you to start thinking about how can you like make an anchor that is safe, perfectly within sort of the realms of what we would deem to be safe, but it actually does the job as well. So yeah, it's good to have like challenges like that. Maybe like challenge yourself ground based though, eh? Don't go, you know, throwing some more curveballs when you arrive at the top of like a route. Is there a time limit? Good question. Time's our problem, not yours. Okay, so what I mean by that is we got 2 days together, and you know, I'm on the clock. As soon as we arrive and together on the first day, then you know, I'm watching the clock, and it's really my problem in terms of the assessment about how the time sort of ticks away and what we need to get on with. I don't set tasks, or tasks are not set against the clock. And I think, again, just coming back to the syllabus, there is nothing in the syllabus that says that indicates like anything needs to be timed, as in you need to set up this certain thing within a set time. And I think it's about giving you some space to allow you to be efficient and perform at what you need to do. You know, there has to be a limit, you know, there has to be a balance here. So again, you know, if we took this sort of broad idea of setting something up and it took an hour, that's obviously a tad too long. So it may well be it's a new venue, you haven't got your eye in yet. It may be that you just need to get that going, and then the next thing you get asked to do, you'll deliver that within, you know, a quarter of the time, for example. Okay, so there might be some sort of extraneous reasons why, but on the whole, we'd be keen to sort of like, you know, address something if it was like, you know, an hour long. We don't have that long. I think realistically, you know, look forward. If you take a group to a crag, however long you take to rig is time lost to climbing. So we kind of need to be efficient at the rigging to then maximize people's enjoyment and engagement with the climbing and the sport. Preferred kit, cams over nuts. So kind of just very much as I've described, I suppose, it's about your knowledge of rock types and your judgment of what's appropriate to use in that situation. So for example, if you were to go to the peak and take a group climb in there, then you're going to need some large cams, you're going to need some large nuts, some large hexes, some chunky slings, and some rope protectors for sort of your group setups. If you come to North Wales, it's probably not all that is what might be helpful, but probably is a bit more fiddly, it's a bit smaller. Hexes are a bit trickier at some of the group crags around here. Definitely nuts, maybe cams, but definitely nuts. Lots of slings, lots of rigging rope. So it's about like, again, you know, having a range of ideas based against different rock types and the environment that you find yourself in. Again, rather than having sort of like a preferred way of doing things, you know, clearly if you're on the lead and, you know, you have that, we all have our favorite size nuts, so to speak, and favorite cam and all that, that's brilliant. Yeah, they're always going to go in. But in terms of like actually sort of a group setup scenario, then I think, you know, again, it's just an open book. You know, we have all this kit, and then we just need to like build something that's appropriate, it's safe. And it's the same for like, you know, going for like personal safety, for example. So we are now seeing a great deal of like more dynamic lanyards being used. So like Petzl Connect, Kong slides with rope in, and a whole variety of like different options like that over a sling or other options. So, you know, we probably have our own preferred option. However, beware of the other options too, because like it might be that you arrive at the top of the crag, you've left your like dynamic, your preferred method in the rucksack at the bottom. So rather than go down and be inefficient with time, you might be able to choose another quick method at the top, which keeps you safe, is totally appropriate, but doesn't necessarily require your sort of preferred piece of kit. Okay. And the guidance note states, for example, in that specific area, need to demonstrate they can choose appropriate methods to safeguard themselves, which are effective and efficient. There isn't one way, okay? There are a number of ways. Listening to the autumnal rain that we're having in Snowdonia at the window at the moment, it feels like it's changing. Winter's on its way. I'm not sure that's a good thing or not, but it is what it is. Right, personal. Brilliant. So why do folk defer? This is a good question. To be honest, I think it's relatively unusual to defer someone, to be brutally honest, if they've followed the minimum pre-requirements needed for the award. Mountain training have a good system. You know, I've been part of mountain training sort of NGB course provision for nearly 20 years now, and I've seen a lot of things change and develop. And I think like in terms of like their support and guidance about what you need to do before you arrive for assessment, in terms of like the candidate handbooks and like the guidance notes I've sort of highlighted tonight, I think if you follow all of that and you arrive for assessment, then you're in a really good place. You're in a really, really good place. I think on the occasions that folk are deferred, it generally relates back to the logbook nearly every time. So it's really like coming down to that one question, you know, are they safe? So obviously something's been deemed to be unsafe. So maybe like it could be around anchors or something. But when we actually like track back through, then like the logbook generally is the area of weakness. So we haven't actually gone out and fulfilled the minimum criteria like really well. So maybe we've got like 40 routes. Maybe some of those routes are short. Maybe some of those routes are sort of very similar types of rock. So there's no requirement to sort of have a percentage within different rock types. It talks about 3 different areas. So, you know, in theory, I suppose you could you know, if you lived in the peak, then you could do a lot of peak. You could do a day or two in the limestone somewhere, and then you could do a day or two in some mountain type volcanic rock. But you know, that's quite centered on like one type of rock type. Maybe they've got lots of repeats as well, so they've got like a pretty hefty logbook, but there's a lot of repeats. So you know, not sort of having that experience at the front end. They know where the moves are, they know where the gear is, they know where the anchor points are, and so on. But generally, the logbooks kind of like sort of identify the weaknesses. And I think like by having those sort of logbook weaknesses, not following general requirements, then some of the things I mentioned previously about having a broad range of anchor building knowledge, for example, you know, it will get shown up. And things like the group rigging, specifically the group abseil. Now, to me, the group abseil is something you can practice at home. Granted, the anchors you can't, but in terms of the actual group abseil, sort of like if you were to take like the bunny ears or like the double overhand knot or whatever you use to create two lines for your safety line and the abseil rope, you know, that can be practiced at home from that point onwards. And to make sure that like you slick at the Italian hitch, you slick at like tying those knots, and you understand like the mechanics of like the both bits of the rope and why they're there. I think I've seen a lot of folks struggle with the mechanics of the Italian hitch, for example, not understanding what the knot does. It's a brilliant knot, it's really dead simple, but you know, it can go wrong. So not tying it properly, not understanding the breaking point particularly well or at all. So you know, certainly around that, it's pretty easy just to sort of practice those elements. So remember, these are minimum, you know, all these numbers are minimum. So as I keep saying, otherwise I've said it before, you know, great excuse to go cragging or go to a climbing area or an indoor wall and then practice and just get the ropes and the gear out and have a little practice. And I think that the best way of passing the award is to follow the guidance and be a climber. It's as simple as that. I think by going climbing, just generally climbing to start with, and then like you start thinking about anchors, and then you start thinking about group rigging, and then you think about what would I do with a group here, you know, how would I warm them up, what would I do with them at the bottom, how would I do any movement skills, how do I do any bouldering, and this is all relative to the indoors as well, and indoor environment. But by doing that, you're basically going through what I'd call your apprenticeship. You know, you're understanding like everything that's been asked of you, and you create this like huge idea of like tools, methods, processes that will allow you to be efficient at the crag, even to the point where you could turn up at a crag that you haven't been to before, but because you've climbed at a lot of crags, you'll be able to quickly like dynamically risk assess that crag very quickly. You'll know where the hazards are, you'll know kind of where your collecting point for your group should be, and so on. And again, you know, by going through all those processes, you know, simple thing, if you have a group for half a day, can you get them into a set of harnesses really quickly? If you can get a group of people into a set of harnesses like quickly, then like that means you're going to have more time climbing potentially. If it takes you 20-30 minutes to do that, then you know it's taken too long. So practice basically. Nervous candidates. Yeah, good question. Do you know, honestly, we're as nervous as well. I get it. We're nervous as well. I think, you know, I think people sort of think I'm, you know, joking at times, but we generally don't know what's going to happen. And we are here to help you. We are not here to be an obstacle to the award. And so we're nervous, or I'm certainly nervous, because I want to get the best out of you, and I want to like provide you the opportunities to be able to do that. And you know, I've got all these other things to worry about, so like things like weather and other people and other groups, and I need to be able to give you the best opportunity to do that. And so yeah, there's a degree of nerves on my part as well. So I suppose as to the previous slide, you know, follow the guidance, make sure you're prepared as you can be, sleep well, eat well, get your kit prepared, don't forget things. Don't squeeze last minute practice in the night before. I always talk about this. So like getting the books out the night before and thinking, oh, I haven't done that. Oh no, quick, practice that. Oh no, am I gonna have to do that tomorrow? You know, it's too late. Just do what you do. Do the simple things really well, and don't go start doing any posh knots. You know, figure eights, overhand knots, clove hitches, Italian hitches. That's kind of all you need to know. You don't need to know like other knots if you don't. So like the night before is not the time to start like messing around. Turn up on time. You know, don't arrive at like 50 miles an hour down the high street trying to find someone to park, and then you're running around like, oh no, when we're meeting. You know, it sounds like a job interview, this, doesn't it? But like, it's all about stuff. It's exactly the same. Okay, it's exactly the same. And I think that will definitely help. And then like, to me, you know, we all have our own individual way of creating a relaxed environment to allow you to like get on with it. And I think that I see that as that's our role. Okay, our role is to like give you an environment that allows you to perform to your best. We can't do much about the weather though, okay? So like if it's raining, there's not much I can do about that. We'll set tasks clearly. I mean, one of the requirements, and you will see it in the candidate guidance notes, sorry, in the trainer assessor's guidance notes, you will see it in there mentioned a few times about setting tasks clearly. So it's our responsibility to set you tasks that are as it says, you know, it's concise and it's clear. So, you know, if you're a little bit unsure, just ask. You know, if you got yourself confused for a moment around top rope and bottom rope, don't worry about it. Just ask us. Like, do you want me to belay and climb from the ground, or do you want me to belay at the top? I've got myself confused. Just be dead honest, and let's just. It's just a name. It's just it's a name. I'm not interested. I'm interested in like, can you keep people safe and can you build good stuff? So, don't worry about that sort of stuff too much. And also, if it helps you on the first day, for example, you know, I'm more than happy like on the first day, like the first task, for example, again, just to settle you in, you know, I'll give you a task. If you want to talk me through it, then things like that I'm more than well open to, because like it just means that like you'll talk me through it and I'll be like, that sounds great, brilliant, crack on. And that's kind of probably the feedback confirmation that you're after, isn't it? You know, just to sort of like bed you in, get you going. So, you know, I suppose talk to us, you know, it's not a clipboard style of assessment these days. You know, we are very open and we're here to help. And I think certainly in that first morning, it's really nice if people want to engage with us, because we can like offer support to allow you to sort of settle down a little bit and get on with it. And if you make a mistake, you leave a carabiner undone, then so be it. Let's move, you know, let's chat about it and let's move on. Let's not do it again. Okay. So and as I say, we're here to help. It's pretty simple. How do I remain current after gaining the award? Yeah, so it's an interesting one. There's actually an appendix at the back of the handbook, candidate handbook, which does actually talk about you're responsible for remaining current. I think like this, and also this particular, I've only just taken a little snapshot here, but there's a bit more, there's another paragraph here, and it elaborates a little bit more about where the responsibility for this exists. So for example, if you're working for an organization, for example, I work for myself and I'm an independent, therefore I have responsibility to remain current. And so, and I belong to a professional association, so I'm also required by them to undertake CPD as well. But however, I think there's a couple of options here. So firstly, keep climbing. That's a nice easy one, I think. Keep going climbing. Go out and carry on doing what you're doing and visit new places and enjoy yourself. Keep your skills together. I suppose the challenge is to sort of carry on working and operating at the same high standard that you have on the assessment. You know, you've achieved a very high standard, and so then beyond that, people will look at you as an RCI holder. So when you go out personally climbing and where you know, people might actually look at what you do and say like, we have a standard that we need to sort of like carry on throughout our career, I guess. Secondly, use the award. So get out there and use the award. So it could be indoors, it could be outdoors, you know, it could be bouldering, it could be sports. There's lots of options here to be involved. And so this will definitely keep you current, because you're going to have to kind of like get on it. And then thirdly, you know, look for development opportunities with the Mountain Training Association, for example. You know, there's a number of things that have popped up over the years, and whether it's in regional areas or whether it's at the conference, or whether it's articles that are written in the Professional Mountaineer, you know, some really good, interesting discussions on there. You know, like I mentioned lanyards earlier, protecting ourselves at the top. There's a good lanyard sort of article, however many editions ago it was. But again, you know, just stay on top of like what is current and what, how we should be operating within the environment. And then lastly, just finishing on, I mean, I suppose we could probably write lots of top tips really, but there's a lot of literature now to support you through this process, and it allows you to understand what the role of the rock climbing instructor is, how to prepare for it, and what is going to happen on the assessment course. There are no hidden surprises. Okay, it's got real clarity in there. It just means that you've got to do a bit of bedtime reading. Okay, so the candidate handbook's really good, and then the guidance notes, I don't think people read it, and I don't think, like I say, it doesn't jump out the page at you. It's like a little PDF icon, but it's a fantastic document. It gives you some examples. So like it takes syllabus points and it gives you examples. We would like, mountain training would like this. And so that's kind of like, then I'm like, okay, I understand the syllabus point now, and that's kind of what I'm going to ask you to do. So it means that it means you can kind of see very clearly about what we're going to do. We have no other document that we're working off. These are the two main documents, okay, and you have access to them. The skills checklist is a good one when you're considering booking an assessment. It takes you through each syllabus point and allows you to identify areas that you might want to develop further, or it will confirm that you're ready. As I mentioned before, if you've got any concerns or you need any guidance or any advice, then just give us a shout. So if you've booked an assessment, then contact your provider. Or, you know, if you haven't, then you want advice, then you're more than welcome to give me a shout if you wish. Practice. Practice is the key crucial part here. So your top rope, your bottom rope, your group abseil setups, and like I say, you know, to make the top rope and bottom rope a little bit tricky, I suppose, but possibly could be done. But certainly your group abseil around like those Italian hitches and tying them off, you can practice this at home. You know, if you did that every night for 3 months, you'd be like way better than what I could do. I know you would be. So, you know, just practice and understand. I think one of the big things we see a lot on the assessment is that there's a lack of understanding. So why do you do that? Well, it's because I was showing that on training course, or a friend showed me how to do it. But why do you do it? So like, you know, try and understand why you do things in certain ways. Visit different venues. So this just gives you a broad sort of benchmark of like experience. So don't broaden your experience. There's a lot of crags in the UK, okay, and I understand that some of you may be geographically like challenged, so you might be limited, but you know there's a huge like number of crags within the UK, and maybe like don't necessarily visit like your favorite crag all the time. If there's another one that's local or somewhere else you can go somewhere else and try something different, that you might come away thinking that's pretty awful, that crag, or you might think, oh, I found another great crag. You know, there's just so much to climb on. And also don't visit where you think you might get on assessment as well. I get that a lot. So people just go climbing where they think they're going to go on the assessment, and so they'll come to North Wales and they'll just go to that. So like I say, there's a few good crags like that we traditionally use a lot, but there are a lot of other crags within North Wales, single pitch venues that are amazing, like absolutely amazing. And we probably don't use them on assessment because of the traveling time. It just takes a little bit more effort to get there, you know, driving or walking in. And so obviously we want to like maximize our time that we have on the assessment at a crag. And so if you just look at the guidebooks, you'll find some incredible climbing. So yeah, go climbing. And that's the last one, isn't it? That's go climbing. I mean, honestly, I think the award is very straightforward to gain if you climb. You just need to be a climber. So kind of like it's a brilliant excuse just to like go to a crag and jump on some routes and go up and down. And that's kind of where it all starts from. If you can like lead, climb, build anchors at the top, then setting up bottom ropes and top ropes is really straightforward. It's very, very straightforward, as is running a group abseil. Okay. Brilliant. There we go. Quick, like what we're on. We're on excellent, almost an hour. I've got a question here from Gareth. If you're a member of a club, could you get experience of running supervised sessions by running learn to climb sessions for novice members indoor and out? That sounds excellent to me. I'd be really excited about that. Yeah, that'd be brilliant, Gareth. I mean, I think like that's like the front end basically, isn't it? You know, like the front end of the queue there. You're not actually shadowing and observing. You're actually like going real hands-on sessions, and that would work really well, I'd suggest. Yeah, brilliant. Hey, if anyone's got any more questions, I will hang here for a bit. If anyone wants to sort of like ask anything, then you're more than welcome. You can sort of unmute yourself and say hello. If not, I will, like I say, I've recorded this. I'll put it up on my website in the next couple of days. It'll be under the news tab. And then over the winter as well, I will be offering some more like sort of ML, RCI events on Zoom, you know, these sort of things. We went really well last year and really engaging, really good fun. So I'll probably undoubtedly be doing some more over this winter too. And then you'll see those on the Mountain Training Association sort of system as well. So brilliant. Thank you ever so much for your time. Hope it's been useful. And like I say, if you've got any questions, you can either hang about or you can drop me a line in the future. Brilliant. Marvelous. Don, good to see you.